Okay, so my name is Ashley Davis, and tonight I'm talking about PNPM. If you've heard of that before, if not, otherwise I'm going to fill you in, so hold tight. Okay, let me get my screen up. Cool. Just before we get into it, I just want to plug my new book, Rapid Full Stack Development. So through this book, I'm trying to help developers build a more effective and more productive development process for themselves. And it's really like what James was just talking about, you know, building like a fast feedback development loop for yourself and learning just how to, not just to write code quickly, but to build code that works really well, works really reliably, and also to make sure that the code's really, really valuable as well. So the early access for my book is now open. So I have written 2 chapters and I've put it on Gumroad for sale for a really massive discount. So it's a chance for people to get on board early for a discount and, you know, make a difference for this book as well. You know, help give me feedback so I can drive this thing forward. I'm working on chapter 3 now, and that's coming soon. Before we look at PNPM, where is it? So I've actually written a blog post about this. So I'm actually talking about the content I put together for a blog post. If you want to see all this in a little bit more detail, check out my blog, Code Capers. I've only literally just put it up today. And so there's a bunch of stuff here, like how to create a project from scratch, which I'm going to show you tonight in a live demo. I'm going to show you how to create a PNPM project from scratch. And then also an example of a JavaScript full stack monorepo, and an example of the same example but rewritten in TypeScript as well, and a little bit at the end to kind of give you an idea of, you know, how it compares to NPM. So check out that blog post if you want. I've also got all the code for the blog post and the talk online. So if you look up my GitHub repository, Ashley Davis, look under PNPM workspace examples, you'll find already there basic, which is basically what I'm going to build tonight, a real basic workspace with a couple of dependencies within the monorepo. And then there's a full stack JavaScript example and a full stack TypeScript example there as well for you to play with. And I'll cover, depending on time, I'll cover those quickly as well tonight. So PNPM, what's it all about? Well, the P in PNPM, if you can say it right, stands for performant. So it's basically NPM, the Node Package Manager, but it's a lot more performant. It runs a lot more quickly. And I reluctantly went to this. So just to be frank, I would prefer to be using NPM. I'd prefer to be using the standard thing that comes out of the box. But I just got absolutely fed up with the time it was taking to do NPM installs. You know, you want to clone a clean version of a project, you want to duplicate a project to experiment on it or whatever. Like I seem to be doing that every day now, and NPM just takes forever. So through work, I got introduced to PNPM, and it's just so much faster than NPM. It's got a much better caching mechanism, and also a mechanism for sharing files between projects, like using symbolic links. And it's just much more effective than NPM. I really hope the NPM guys learn something and that I can eventually stop using this. It is that fantastic. So it's pretty much a drop-in replacement for NPM as well. So most of the things that you'd normally do on a day-to-day basis with NPM, you'll just replace PNPM and just use that command instead of NPM. And so, you know, there's a few things that are different, but most of the standard things you do every day are basically the same. It's just a lightweight, you know, drop-in replacement for NPM. Now, what you're also going to see in my live demo in a moment is that it's got a bunch of useful tools for dealing with workspaces. NPM has some of these sort of same style tools, but in my opinion, the ones that are in NPM are just kind of clunky and a little bit difficult to use. And PNPM has tools for managing workspaces that are just easier to use, I think. So this is a great way really to kind of structure a monorepo where you've got multiple JavaScript packages or programs, applications in the same code repository. Let's work through how to build one of these. So I'm just running Windows 11 here, but I think pretty much every command that I'm going to use will work on Mac OS or Linux. I've already got Node.js 16 installed. Now, if you want to install PNPM, the easiest way to do it is just by npm. So an npm install -g for global PNPM. That will get it for you. There's various other ways you can install as well if you look at their webpage on different platforms. But if you've already got Node.js npm, you can just install it as a global package, and then you're just using PNPM. So I just got make sure I've got nothing in here. So I'm just going to make a project in here. It's just going to be a real simple project just to demonstrate how to get started and how to make a couple of packages within a monorepo depend on each other. So with npm, you do an npm init-y to create a new project. With PNPM, it's just PNPM init. You don't need the -y. It just sort of does that by default. And that gives you your package.json. Now, if you're not happy working with the built-in JavaScript date object, which has obviously problems, as we saw in the last talk, you could use something like Moment.js, or the cut down kind of equivalent of that is called Day.js. That's what I tend to use. And you can install that. So with npm, you'd use npm install Day.js. With PNPM, you just put a P in front of it, PNPM install Day.js. So we've got that. Now I'm just going to open Visual Studio Code here. And I'll make myself a code file. And I'm just going to cheat a little bit here. I've got a cheat sheet off to the side, so I'm just going to copy some code across. So you don't have to worry about watching me type that in. So, there's nothing too exciting here. I'm just running JavaScript code, except I've set up my package file with PNPM, and I've installed, a package using PNPM. So nothing complicated yet. And you can't see the advantages of this yet, because this is such a small project, a small dependency. So, whether you use npm or PNPM is not going to make a difference for performance until you go to a bigger project with more dependencies or with bigger dependencies. So you're not really going to see the performance aspect of it in this demo, unfortunately. Now, what I want to do here is make this into a monorepo, right? So I want to make a couple of sub packages, and then I want to depend the root package or the root workspace on one of the packages, and I'll make one of the packages depend on one of the others. In fact, I probably won't even take it that far. I'll just keep it real simple, just so you can see the basics. So I'm creating a PNPM workspace.yaml file here, and I can tell it, where to find sub packages. And let's say I'm going to put them under the packages subdirectory. So anything that I put on, any package that I put under a packages subdirectory will automatically become a package in the workspace, and it'll be symlinked into the other packages that require it. So I'm actually going to create that packages subdirectory here. I'll create a package. I'm just, for lack of imagination, I'm just going to call it A, and actually to line up with my blog post as well. So I'm just going to go down to that directory. I'm just going to init a package file there as well. So this is a sub package. It gets its own package file. I'll create an index.js file down here as well for this package. And just super simple, I'm just going to make it export a function here that says hello world or something. Save that. And I'm going to go back to my root package now, and I'm going to make a dependency on that nested package. So the package is A, and it's coming from the workspace. So what I need to do to kind of connect this up now is just go back to my root workspace and do a PNPM install. You can just do I if you want the shortcut. So that's actually going to connect it up now. So if I look in my node modules, you can see there's a package A. So that's symlinked. That's a symbolic link to the nested package A. So it's a package dependency within a monorepo. Now, if I go back to my original code file, let's import, bring in package A. So you can see here, I'm requiring in my sub package using just its name. So I'm not using a relative path like what you'd normally probably have to do something like that if you wanted to get this working without these workspaces. And I just print that message. So let's just see if that works. Hello from package A. So that's the message that's coming, being imported into the root package from package A. So I could, I don't think I'm going to continue this now, but if you look at the blog post or you look at the code that's on GitHub, you'll see that there's also a package B, and I've just set it up trivially so that package A also depends on package B. Okay, so that's just a real simple example of how you can set up a PNPM workspace. You can have as many packages as you want and have dependencies between them. Now I'm going to move on. I'm going to show you one of the more advanced examples now, so you can actually see some of the benefits you get for running scripts against nested subpackages. Also, I should show you in the blog post what the structure of this next project looks like. So this is kind of like a fairly typical full stack mono repo here. You can see there's a package.json. You can see that there's the PNPM workspace file, like what we just created. PNPM lock here, you can see that's like PNPM's equivalent of NPM's package lock file. Now in this project that I'm about to show you, there's a backend project, so it's a Node.js server. I think it's running on Express. The front end, I think I made it. It's been a while since I actually wrote this code, but I think it's like a parcel bundle, real simple web page, nothing too exciting. And then under a packages subdirectory, we've got an example of a kind of a nested package here, a validation library. So this example, which is like probably one of the best ones that I could think of for a full stack application, is that the back end and the front end both share the same validation code. So you can run validation in the front end before something is submitted to the back end, and then you can run that same validation in the back end for the ultimate in the secure backend. So I've got the example code open here in another terminal. So this is the Git repo for this project. You can grab it for yourself if you want to try it. The basic example, which is like an extended example of the thing that I just built. And then there's the full stack JavaScript example. And then there's the full stack TypeScript example. Let's go down into the JavaScript example. Now, one of the cool things about PNPM, and I'm not sure if you get this with NPM workspaces because I haven't used NPM workspaces that much, but when you get like a monorepo like this, you can just run PNPM install, PNPM I at the top level. That will automatically, you can see there it's scoped across 4 workspace projects, and there's nothing to install here because I've already installed this before. But if you were installing this the first time, it would just go ahead and install all the dependencies for all the nested packages that are in this monorepo. So that's one thing that's really convenient. And you may or may not be able to do that with NPM, but I'm not sure off the top of my head. So what do we got here? Let's list some files. So we've got a backend directory. So this is just a Node.js application. It's got a couple of scripts in here like start and start dev to start the backend. We've got the front end here. And in the package file for it, there's start and start dev are the main things here, where you can see where it's running the parcel bundler to put together the static website. Now, one of the useful things that we get with PNPM, besides the fact that if you look here, you can see that the validation library is included. So there's a validate under the packages directory here. We've got the validation library that's included in both the back end and the front end. So we require that in or import that module in like it came from NPM, but it didn't. It came from the same monorepo. But the other thing we can do here is if we look in the package file for the root workspace here, is we can run, we've got some facilities here for running scripts against sub repos. So what we're doing here with the start script at the top level is we're running the start script against all the nested packages recursively. So it's going to run npm start for every sub package, which basically in this case means the back end and the front end. So it allows us to simultaneously start the back end and the front end in this case. The streaming option here is basically so that it doesn't kind of do like output in parallel, which I don't like. It kind of like streams it interleaved. I think it looks a bit better. I think it's and it doesn't collapse output as well. So if you're just wondering where that comes from. So I can run an npm start at the root of my project here, and you can see what it's actually doing here. It's running this recursive start script. And so this is actually starting my back end and my front end simultaneously. So it's pretty convenient that I can, one run command here, and it can execute across, or one script executes against nested or multiple nested sub packages. Let's just have a quick look at this. It's just a simplest to-do list that I could do. So I can add to-do items here. And you can see here that if I try and add a to-do item with nothing in it, this is where the validation kicks in. So this is the validation library that's kind of stopping this from happening in the front end. But the same thing also happens in the back end. So where's my VS Code go? Here we go. So if you want to try this as well, like you can actually go into the back end here, load up the, the HTTP request script. This uses VS Code REST client, and you can run the script here. So here's a HTTP post request to add a to-do item directly to the back end, and it's an empty to-do item. So this should get rejected. So you can see it's a 400 bad request. And the reason that's rejected is because it's using the same validation code in the front end and the back end shared by that validation library. So hopefully you think that's cool. And I just want to scale this up to the TypeScript example now as well, because there's a couple of good examples of scripts in there that you can run. Now, I'm probably not going to show you the code for this one. We'll just move on. But this is the same as the JavaScript version. It's just upgraded to TypeScript. And the key difference here is that our validation library contains types. It contains TypeScript type definitions that we can share between the back end and the front end, which is really cool for having a consistent kind of data schema effectively, going through your REST API for your back end. Actually, I do just have to open this so I can remind myself what are the scripts that I want to show you. So I'm just opening up the package file just to remind myself what the scripts are. Oh yeah, so I can run an npm run compile here. Actually, I'll do a clean first. So doing an npm run clean, that's going to run my clean script against all the nested projects here. This is an example actually of the non-streaming output. So if you remember that stream flag from the last one, this is what it looks like where it kind of groups the output from each package together. Which is okay when the output's only a little bit, but when you get more output, it kind of collapses it and hides output, which I don't like. So normally I would use that stream flag that we saw a moment ago. So I've just run the clean script. That's deleted all the intermediate files and generated files and that kind of stuff. Now I can do a build script. So this is running the TypeScript, the TSC command against every sub package here to compile the TypeScript code to JavaScript code. And the nice thing about PNPM is because it knows the dependency trees, like it knows that the front end depends on validation, it knows that the back end depends on validation, it will compile them in the right order automatically, which is kind of cool. Okay, so shall we scale up to an even more advanced project? So let me show you where I'm getting this next example from. So this is the open source version 2 of my project Dataforge Notebook. So I'm open sourcing it this year. So this is a fairly large monorepo. And this program actually, going back to the previous talk, this program is actually, I like to think of it as a REPL on steroids. So it's like Jupyter Notebook, but for JavaScript, and it allows you to kind of run snippets of code and produce graphics like charts and maps and stuff like that. But it's a massive complex monorepo, and you can see under the main directory here, there's a packages subdirectory. So there's a bunch of packages here that are shared in different ways between different parts of this monorepo. There's a plugins directory here. So these are also like sub packages that PNPM is aware of and can share throughout the monorepo. So there's plugins basically to make the different kinds of visualizations work. And the other thing here I have is a directory called shells, where I like to think of like the complete program. So the browser shell is what makes this thing work in a web browser, and it coordinates all the packages together in a way that works in a browser. And then there's an Electron package here that basically makes this a desktop application. So it coordinates everything together, brings all the packages together in a format that's suitable for running under Electron. And there's a couple of other things here, like the evaluation engine is the server, which basically evaluates the code for this, as I call it, REPL on steroids. And Storybook, which is a really great way, actually, also going back to the previous talk, it's a really great way to kind of showcase individual components, like the demos of components that James was talking about. So there's a shell there for that. And there's also a testbed, which is just my little kind of, playground for putting in there and trying out and doing whatever I like and experimenting with whatever I like in there. But you can imagine, managing this thing where each of these is like a separate package, you need something like PNPM to be able to kind of run commands across all these things. So those same kind of commands that we were just looking at, let me show you how they work here. So I've got similar stuff here, like should have clean. So that's just deleted all the generated code and all the intermediate files for all the projects there. I want to build all the TypeScript code, do an npm run build. Oh no, sorry, npm run compile. So this is compiling all the TypeScript code into the generated JavaScript code, which is actually kind of the end product that you see when you're running this application. I'm not going to worry about letting that complete because it could take a little while after a clean build. But I can also do things like compile watch. And this essentially, hopefully it works, it basically does a compilation in parallel for everything. So anywhere that I change code in the project, it's going to go back and just rebuild that effectively. And it works quite nicely with the Webpack setup that I've got for live reload. So I can change anything in any package anywhere, and I've got this running in one terminal, and in another terminal I've got my Webpack dev server running, and I can change code anywhere, and it'll just show up. I don't know what's going on here. I've got a wall of errors. Wasn't expecting that. Let's just pretend that didn't happen. Yeah, so with PNPM, you can say recursively run these scripts, but there's also another option. Let me just see if I can pick up an example of that. So that you've got this filter example here. So we're saying basically we want to run here. We want to run the start development server script, but we want to run that against this particular sub package. So it doesn't matter where that package is, like underneath the monorepo. It could be several levels deep. It's just as long as it's got a unique package name, PNPM is going to find that, and then it's going to run that script against it. So I actually think this works. Again, I don't have a lot of experience with NPM workspaces, but I think this is a little bit less clunky than the equivalent kind of thing that you can do normally with NPM. So I think that's about all I've got. I did go a little bit over time, but that's okay because I'm the last speaker.
It's definitely all good with me. Thank you very much for that intro. That's a clap as well. That was very much appreciated indeed. And we even had a few questions. Very much in the spirit of like Data Forge Notebook, or being another REPL. I was just thinking about that before. The fact that we can use PNPM here to just go and completely build that out in one big go is quite amazing, actually. I think I've got a few use cases for that too.
Yeah, this is version 2 for me as well. Like you could, and version 1 was like closed source. I didn't let anyone see that, and it's a huge mess. Like the setup script for that to get everything working right. Like because similar structure, a lot of nested code and applications but just before PNPM and before workspaces, basically a lot messier.
Yeah. Yeah. No, look, I kind of wrote that off as being generally impossible or impractical to even achieve without a lot of wrangling beforehand. So yeah, this is definitely seems like a life-saving tool. Yeah, we had a couple of different questions again in chronological order. One of the earliest questions here was, "Hi Ashley, do you know if this was a fork of the official NPM?"
I don't know.
Mm.
I would expect not, because it's pretty different. I mean, the way it structures its data stores and its cache is just remarkably different to NPM. And NPM, you'll recall a while back, it changed from a nested directory structure to flat. And PNPM, and I'm not sure if Yarn works this way as well, but PNPM has just said, no, it's going to be nested. We're just going to do it that way, and we're going to use this completely different kind of, they call it the content addressable store. It's like the data model they use for kind of sharing all the packages you use for everything on your computer, basically, to make it really efficient. And so it's
secret sauce.
It's very different the way it works to NPM under the hood.
Cool. All right. So next question was, after setting up a project with PNPM, will moving back to NPM be impossible once leveraging the multiple nested packages and dependencies, or will it ignore it?
Yeah, it's kind of difficult. It depends on the complexity of the project and how many of the PNPM features you're relying on. Yeah. And occasionally I have found a problem with PNPM and have had to sort of gut it back to NPM to figure out how to move forward, basically. In general, PNPM's pretty good. Like I had a problem with it with Parcel. So what Parcel does, and I use Webpack really for a lot of sort of more professional stuff. But I love Parcel, and Parcel's awesome. But and then automatically Parcel, when say you want to use TypeScript with Parcel, it just behind the scenes automatically NPM installs TypeScript for you and sets it up. That's one of the great things about Parcel. But with PNPM, when you're using PNPM to set up Parcel, it just fails at that automatic install. So then it's a bit more difficult. You've got to know to go back in and install stuff, and it's just an incompatibility, really. The other place I had trouble with PNPM was where I've had to kind of sort of have both NPM and PNPM working in parallel. Is that when I occasionally kind of deploy like a test or a prototype on DigitalOcean apps, which uses like the what's it called, the Heroku build packs or something under the hood there.
Yeah.
And but it doesn't understand PNPM, so it's like you can't get it to deploy like a web application on this. Most like all the container-based stuff is fine. Kubernetes is fine on DigitalOcean, but if you're using their new app service that runs that Heroku build packs, like it will fail to install dependencies, and so you have to have to make that work. And I kind of use it rarely. It's just really convenient to be able to deploy something without having to make a build pipeline or something like that. So you just have a package lock for NPM, and you have the package lock that PNPM expects. So you can run them both side by side in limited circumstances. But once you're talking about these big kind of mono repos where there's nested structures that need to be symlinked together, NPM can kind of do that as well using NPM workspaces. So it might be possible to have them coexisting to some degree as well. I've never done it with that complicated a project.
Yeah, no, it sounds like you definitely need to go and explore it a little bit, because it might require a bit of either translation or conversion of the workspaces just to kind of keep their boundaries in check or something like that.
So we're using PNPM at work as well. So we've probably I've used it on about 3 very complicated mono repos so far, and it's just saved so much time and presented hardly any problems at all.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. I guess some of those tooling things that you mentioned, they kind of have expectations or assumptions on the ecosystem, that's especially when they're trying to sort of inject and dynamically include that dependencies and things like that. They're crossing into the boundaries of not being the package manager anymore or being the server at the time. So there's bound to be some edge cases. Hopefully, a bit of contribution to someone like Parcel or something will make PNPM happy and vice versa. That sounds pretty great.
I
go ahead.
honestly wish Node.js would just take everything that PNPM's done and just incorporate it into NPM, and then we could all just forget about it. We could just go back to using NPM, and it would be a joyful experience again.
Yeah, well, look, it's happened in some ways before when the response to Yarn was quite a significant move by the NPM team as well. So you never know, and that's how our ecosystem evolves, right? It's a good competition. If people see some great stuff from other folks, then it's good to kind of blow things together. So it sounds good. One of the last questions here is that nested live reload is awesome. Does it patch in the live React live reload correctly too, since that's generally problematic?
What I don't understand exactly what that is.
I think questions around, when you got React components, there's a live reload plugin so that it triggers in the web browser as well. So it'll do like a WebSocket poll. I think the question here is that, does the same thing work across updates to the bundler? Would that then republish and get all your Webpack configs to correctly trigger the live reload plugins?
Yes. So I've tried it with Parcel Live Reload, and it works really well. I've tried it with, I usually use Webpack these days with the hot module reload, whatever it's called, turned off, right? If you in your dev server config, if you say hot equals false, then basically it'll do a whole page refresh, which like for most projects, that's really acceptable for me, because otherwise, configuring HMR in Webpack is such a pain that I almost never can keep it working.
I think that's what this question is alluding to, right? Like they said, it's hard enough for us to get to that point. So yeah,
I rarely use HMR in Webpack, so I don't know how well it plays with that. But I mean, it should be fine. It should be fine. It's just like, at the end of the day, it's just a node module subdirectory with files in it, right?
Yeah.
Same as NPM, except in this case, it's symlinked through, and it's almost, in terms of the final thing you get, whether it's NPM or PNPM, it's just almost unnoticeable.
Yeah.
And it gives you the same result with a slightly different structured file system, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I used to pull together these different elements via NPM link via other installs across the computer. So
and it's so much easier to do a PNPM link. I didn't say that, but if it because a lot of the stuff that I'm using this with is within a monorepo where it's all kind of automatic depending on your workspace configuration. But you can easily take any other package you've got on your hard drive and just say, PNPM link, relative or absolute path to that module, and it brings it in. Whereas it's a little bit more difficult with NPM link because you have to kind of do it on both sides. With PNPM, you only have to do the link on the side where you're linking it in, and it takes care of everything else.
Very cool. Very cool. Last thing is, kind of a quick question. Assuming package deduplication is done at the naming level, that's in response to the fact that you said that they needed to be a unique name. I think that's kind of equivalent with all package managers, right? They'll have to be kind of unique.
To be honest, I haven't tried having duplicated names, but it just made sense to me to have all packages have different names. So the name of the package comes from package.json. So you can have things that are in kind of similar named, or at different levels of the tree, maybe the same folder name or something like that. But what really matters is what's in the name in the package.json. And it's really so that when you're running the script with the filter argument from the top level, that you can kind of target that script with a unique name. And I don't know what happens. Actually, I didn't even try it. I don't know what happens if you've got two packages of the same name. Maybe it just runs both of them.
Yeah, I don't think NPM would be very happy with it. Your package JSON would think it's the same package, right? And maybe a different version or something. So yeah, it might be a bit of a confusion. It might be relating to different parts of the subdirectories.
I mean, if it doesn't, it should bring up an error really, because you can't then you can't be certain what you're linking to in your dependency tree. So.
Exactly. Yeah. So it should be at least well supported in an error case.
If someone wants to hack my or grab my basic project from GitHub and hack it so that both packages are called package A and instead of package A and package B, and they can tell us what happens.
I'm assuming explosions will happen. Like that should print kaboom, like that should be the expected output, at least in my experience. That's awesome. Well, thank you so very, very much, Ashley. That is all the questions we have for you right now. I will double check the actual live stream chat. No, nothing additional here. I'll give it the usual 10-second count as well in case somebody comes back. But yeah, no, I appreciate your time and taking us through all that stuff. That is a super useful tool. It's actually, I hadn't come across it yet either at the moment. So I'm really glad to hear about it. And I'm definitely going to try with a couple of directories that I know could use a bit of better wrangling than what we've set up at the moment.
I think you know when you need it. If you're, for the nth time that day, you're sitting there waiting for an NPM install to complete, instead of going and getting a coffee, hit Control-C and try it with PNPM install instead.
Yeah,
it's so easy to just replace it with PNPM. So
yeah, and I think a lot of the wrangling was done with like a entirely separate, services running in Docker containers and stuff, and rather than trying to mono repo it instead, thinking that some of these things were impossible. So triggering it, through that is going to be much more convenient for local dev experiences sometimes, in some situations at least. So yeah, I can definitely see some help being applied for this. But yeah, thanks again. And yeah, I saw on the chat we had Rodrigo saying, just purchased your book, Ashley. Thanks for your contribution to the community. So thank you very much,
thank you
Rodrigo.
so much.
Supporting each other is always a good thing. So yeah, that's great to hear. Well, good. I'm going to launch into my my bye preamble and thank our audience now. And thanks, Nash. Appreciate it.